"Ma'am, your Medicare premiums are increasing." The woman on the phone sounded calm, professional, emotionless. But 71-year-old Diane Walker suddenly couldn't breathe. Because 3 months after burying her husband, the government had just informed her she would now pay more to survive alone. Diane tightened her grip around the kitchen counter while staring at a framed photograph of her and Robert standing on a beach in South Carolina 20 years earlier. He was laughing in the picture. Sunburned nose, white baseball cap, arm around her shoulders. Back then, retirement looked simple. Work hard, save money, pay off the house, claim Social Security, grow old together. Nobody warned them about the second blade. Nobody warned them that after death, the tax code changes personality. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows of her suburban Pennsylvania home, while unopened sympathy cards still sat stacked beside a bowl of untouched fruit on the table. Robert had been dead only 93 days. 93 days. And already the engineered system was recalculating what Diane would owe for simply continuing to exist alone. Listen carefully, because millions of married retirees believe the financial danger ends once they finally retire. But for many Americans over 65, the real trap begins after one spouse dies. This is the widow's penalty, one of the coldest hidden rules buried inside the American retirement system. And in 2026, it is quietly devastating surviving spouses across the country. The part nobody tells you: losing a spouse can actually increase your taxes, your Medicare premiums, the taxation of your Social Security, and the speed at which retirement savings begin disappearing. Think about how brutal that sounds emotionally. You lose your life partner, then the system sends you a larger bill. That is the financial guillotine most couples never see coming. Diane and Robert did everything responsibly. That's what makes this story terrifying. Robert worked 40 years as an electrical contractor outside Pittsburgh. Diane spent nearly 3 decades working in a pediatric clinic. They were middle-class Americans, careful people, no yachts, no luxury penthouses, no reckless gambling, just ordinary retirement dreams. A paid-off house worth about $510,000. 2 traditional IRAs totaling roughly $940,000. Monthly Social Security income, a small pension, and enough savings to finally breathe after decades of working. Or so they thought. Because buried inside their retirement plan was a hidden mathematical trap waiting for one funeral to activate it: the widow's penalty. And the IRS was waiting patiently the entire time. This is where the engineered system becomes terrifying. When Robert was alive, they filed taxes jointly. Their combined income thresholds were wider. Their Medicare IRMAA limits were higher. Their tax brackets were more forgiving. But the moment Robert died, everything compressed, like a trapdoor snapping shut beneath Diane's feet. Listen carefully. A surviving spouse often goes from married filing jointly to single filer overnight. But the retirement accounts do not shrink overnight. The required minimum distributions do not disappear overnight. The investment income does not vanish overnight. The taxes simply become harsher. That's the hidden rule. Diane learned this after meeting with her CPA 6 weeks after Robert's funeral. The room smelled faintly like printer toner and burnt coffee, while yellow legal pads covered the conference table. The CPA adjusted his glasses carefully before explaining what was about to happen. Diane would soon face higher taxable income exposure, more Social Security taxation, possible IRMAA Medicare surcharges, larger effective tax rates on retirement withdrawals, and eventually, bigger required minimum distributions once she reached the next phase of retirement withdrawals. Diane stared at him in disbelief. "But our income is lower now," she whispered. "Exactly. That's what makes the trap so dangerous. The system taxes surviving spouses differently, even while household income often falls dramatically. One person dies, but the bills stay alive, and the government keeps the receipt." Stop the video. If you are married and over 60, you need to understand this now. Not after the funeral, not after the hospital, not after the first IRS notice. Now. Because widowhood changes the mathematics of retirement permanently, and most couples never prepare for it emotionally or financially. This is where families lose hundreds of thousands of dollars quietly, not through one catastrophic event, but through layered financial erosion, the quiet confiscation. First comes the income compression, then comes the Medicare trap, then comes the Social Security taxation, then the forced retirement withdrawals begin escalating. Layer after layer, the trap keeps tightening. 3 months after Robert's death, Diane received the Medicare notice. That changed everything emotionally. Her Part B and Part 500 premiums were increasing because the income calculation still reflected earlier joint returns combined with retirement withdrawal levels. The woman on the phone explained it mechanically, formulaically, like reading weather forecasts. But to Diane, it felt like punishment for surviving. That is the emotional brutality of the widow's penalty. The system is mathematical, not compassionate, and retirees discover that too late. Now let's talk about the hidden danger almost nobody discusses. Required minimum distributions, RMDs, the forced withdrawals from traditional retirement accounts beginning later in retirement. Because Diane and Robert spent decades building large tax-deferred retirement balances, that sounded smart while they worked. The brokerage firms praised them constantly. Excellent retirement progress, strong growth, tax-efficient saving. But tax deferral is not tax elimination. That's the part nobody tells you. The IRS eventually wants access to every deferred dollar, and after one spouse dies, those forced distributions often become even more damaging. Imagine this carefully. A married couple may have comfortably managed Social Security, moderate retirement withdrawals, and pension income together. But once widowhood arrives, the surviving spouse now handles similar retirement account balances inside narrower single-filer tax thresholds. The same retirement money suddenly becomes more taxable. That's the second blade. Diane's CPA projected future withdrawal scenarios for her. She nearly cried looking at the estimates. Future RMDs could push her into higher federal brackets, into IRMAA Medicare surcharges, and into heavier taxation on her Social Security benefits, all while living alone. This is where the financial guillotine becomes real. The retirement plan that once looked safe now resembled a slowly leaking vault. And Diane realized something horrifying. Robert's death had not only broken her emotionally, it had financially changed the rules of the game itself. Listen carefully. The widow's penalty is not one tax. It is a chain reaction, a hidden cascade built into the retirement system. That's why so many surviving spouses feel financially ambushed after loss. One retired teacher in Arizona lost her husband at age 69. Their combined retirement income had been manageable for years. But after his death, she faced higher effective taxation, higher Medicare costs, larger withdrawal pressure, and reduced flexibility. Within 4 years, she withdrew nearly $210,000 more from retirement accounts than expected, simply to manage the changing financial structure around her. This is happening quietly all across America, and most couples never discuss it while both spouses are still alive. Because people plan for retirement, but they rarely plan for survivorship. That's the hidden rule. Now let's expose the real danger. Because the real danger is timing. The years between retirement and required minimum distribution age may become the most important financial planning window of a retiree's life. Those are the harvest years, the years where couples still possess flexibility, the ability to strategically convert retirement funds, lower future RMD exposure, manage tax brackets, prepare for widowhood, and reduce future Medicare surcharges. But most retirees waste those years doing nothing. Why? Because the system trained them to fear taxes today, while ignoring the explosion waiting later. The IRS loves deferred retirement money, because delayed taxation often becomes larger taxation, especially after decades of compound growth. Diane and Robert deferred taxes faithfully for 40 years. Then widowhood arrived, and suddenly the entire deferred structure became more dangerous. That's the engineered system. Cold, patient, mathematical. Now here comes another hidden danger, the Social Security tax trap. Most retirees do not realize up to 85% of Social Security benefits can become taxable depending on combined income calculations, and retirement withdrawals directly affect those calculations, meaning the money retirees pull from traditional IRAs can increase the taxation of benefits they already paid into during their working lives. Think about that emotionally. You save responsibly. You retire responsibly. You collect Social Security responsibly. Then the retirement withdrawals themselves trigger additional taxation on the benefits. That's the part nobody tells you. The system stacks consequences together. Diane learned this after discovering her future retirement withdrawal strategy could dramatically increase how much of her Social Security became taxable. She sat silently at the kitchen table for nearly 20 minutes afterward, staring at Robert's empty chair. Because for the first time, she realized retirement wasn't simply about saving money. It was about surviving the extraction phase. and the extraction phase can become brutal for surviving spouses. Now let's talk about the survival strategy, because this is where retirees regain control before the trap fully closes. First, married couples over 60 should begin modeling survivor tax scenarios immediately, not someday, now. Second, evaluate whether strategic Roth conversions during lower income years could reduce future widowhood tax exposure. Because Roth accounts generally do not trigger future RMD taxation the same way traditional accounts do. Third, review Medicare IRMAA thresholds carefully. Most retirees discover them too late. Fourth, understand that retirement planning must include survivorship planning, not just accumulation. And finally, stop assuming retirement automatically becomes financially easier after one spouse dies. For many Americans, the system becomes harsher. That's the hidden rule buried deep inside the tax code. Save this video. Seriously, save it, because millions of married retirees are approaching widowhood completely unprepared for the financial changes waiting behind it. Comment your age and state below, and send this video to one married couple immediately, especially couples over 60 with large traditional retirement accounts. Because the greatest retirement threat may not be market crashes, it may be the hidden penalties triggered after one spouse disappears from the tax return forever. My name is Ivana Forbes. Subscribe now for more retirement survival warnings, IRS traps, Medicare dangers, and hidden financial rules threatening ordinary Americans over 60. And remember this, the funeral is not always where the financial damage ends. For many retirees, that's exactly where the system quietly begins collecting.